Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today we're hearing from a Canadian athlete who won the pro card at 20 years old and then won placed fourth at the Vancouver Pro Show recently for her pro debut. She loves to advocate for mental health in the sport, which is something you guys know I really appreciate, and she works as a posing and lifestyle coach for her company, Rzlnt Fitness. Welcome to the show, Tessa Baresssi. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. That was an amazing intro, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. I have been looking forward, of course, to having you on. As we were just talking about, you're not only one of the most highly requested guests, but I'm like, I know it'll happen one day, and finally we're here.
Said finally I found that message that you sent me a long time ago. This whole time I was like, why haven't I, what am I doing wrong? Why haven't I been invited on the show? Meanwhile, you're literally in my DMs like, hey, where are you gonna respond? Like, we're waiting.
That's so funny. And I think I even had my assistant probably follow up with you a bunch too, after the initial effort. But no, it's happening.
And that's what matters. We have more stuff to talk about now.
Exactly. So I gotta start by asking what I ask everyone, which is if you have a ritual or something you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage.
I do actually. I have a few different things. So what I do backstage, and I do this at every single show, you can literally ask anybody. I did this before I won my pro card. I did this before my pro debut. I did this at my last show, is I take my father's chain and I hold it in both my hands. I put it over my heart and I pray to him. And I just ask him, be here with me and just please shine down on me. And then before I go on stage, I kind of just clear my head. I try and get into this Zen state where I'm not really focusing too much on, oh my gosh, I need to make sure I don't mess up my routine. I need to make sure I smile. Need to make sure blah, blah, blah. I kind of just clear my head and I focus on just having the best possible time up there. And ever since I switched my mindset to that, instead of being all nervous and anxious about going on stage, I actually enjoy the experience so much more. And I genuinely have so much fun. And by the time I get off the stage, I'm like, no, let me back up there. I want to go back.
Yes. Oh my gosh, what a difference just being grounded before going up there actually makes.
Yeah, it almost just feels like you're flowing.
Yes, you can feel the warmth of the lights on the stage, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you almost just move differently. So I think it's really cool that you do that. And I understand that your father passed away, and I love that you bring him into that with you. Now, if you don't mind me asking more about that, when did that happen?
So he passed away in 2018. I was actually 6 days out from competing in the Vancouver Pro Am. And at this point, I was still an amateur athlete. I think this was my second bikini show ever. And he wanted to come to that show so badly, and we knew something was up with his health. We didn't know exactly what it was. The doctors couldn't figure it out and nobody could figure it out. I knew something was wrong, but I was so deep in prep I couldn't put my finger on it. And what had happened was he actually had a brain aneurysm 6 days before I was supposed to compete. And I just remember, being 6 days out, you're in tunnel vision, you're dieted, you can't really think as a normal human would think. Your mindset is kind of shaped towards problem solving and, getting to where you need to be, getting from point A to point B. And then you receive this tremendous news and like this devastating news. And I think just when that happened, my brain, I almost, I don't want to say I went into survival or I went into fight or flight, but something just switched in me. And I was like, I have to compete for him. Like it
Mm.
has to be for him because he wanted to be there so bad. And I think that was kind of my way of coping with his loss was, if I'm on stage, I know his presence is with me. So that's why every single show I bring his chain with me. Um, and I feel very, very close to him every single time I step on stage because he was the one person in the audience who I knew was my biggest fan. And processing his loss, I hold that with me. I hold all his values with me. Every single prep I do, every time I step on stage, it's obviously something that I don't talk about 24/7 because there's a lot more to competing than just, doing it for that reason. But I would say that is the biggest reason that I do what I do. And I also think I just forgot the question you asked. I totally went on a
Oh,
tangent there.
actually, no, you answered the question, which was when that happened, and you provided such great insight into that impact on your journey and your outlook. And it seems as though he has made such an impact on the way you pursue your passions and live your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because a brain aneurysm, that is very sudden. It's unexpected. You don't really get much warning. And I think just having that and losing him so early, I think I was 18 years old at the time as well. I think it really reshaped the way that I view life. And I remind myself every single day, like, our time is not forever. Like, our time's very limited here. So whenever I do anything, I honestly just try to have the best time of my life. I try to have fun because I want to collect as many experiences as possible while I am here.
That's really beautiful. And I'm tremendously sorry that you experienced that loss. And I know how difficult it is to lose someone so suddenly. It's very traumatic as well to find
Mm.
those things out, and it can definitely just change the way we see life and the world. And I lost my mom suddenly a year ago. Well, now almost 2 years
Sorry.
ago. Thank you. Well, I'm saying this because I can relate, like I know it can change the way you live your life. And it's for me, it's changed how I express things to people. It's changed my outlook, even on competing in some ways as well. Like there's so much to every single person we come in contact with. A lot of it we don't even know, right? Like there's things that we'll never know someone's faced or been through.
Right, exactly. I love what you said about how it's changed the way that you express things to people. Um, I think that's very important. And looking back, if I could change one thing, I would just tell him that I love him more than I did. And I think that's helped me express love in my life to other people now, which has been a blessing. I make sure my mom knows I love her. I make sure my friends know. I don't hesitate to express those things, even if it makes people a little bit uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a very similar experience. I'm like not afraid to broach difficult conversations. I want people to know how much what they do and say and how they show up means to me, because when I see a lot of how my mom was, I'm like, wow, she was such a giver. She showed up so much. You would never know a lot of what she struggled with. And then now it's like when I come in contact with people, even someone at the grocery store, for example, and I was always a very friendly person, but I just take that extra minute now to really like, how are you really doing? Or like, wow, that's a really cute hat, or because it can make a big difference in someone's life. And as you said, some people are very uncomfortable with that, or even expressing love or reaching out is hard. But I think just having people know you care and someone cares about them is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that a lot with my coaching with my clients. A lot of the time, people just really want to feel seen and heard and validated and understood and know that there's someone out there who supports them and cares about them. And I really try and manifest that with all the relationships I have in my life, whether that's platonic, romantic, or client coach relationship. I want everybody who's in my space or around me to be affected by that light and feel almost recharged after we have a conversation, or know that they're seen and they are cared for.
Hear you say that, like my head just went so many directions. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to add about this and this. So, first of all, I love that. I think it's awesome that you do that. Second of all, something I think a lot of coaches do not consider is that they are a secure attachment opportunity for their clients.
Mm-hmm.
So you showing up in that way provides a secure attachment relationship for someone, letting them know you have their back, you're there when they need them, and you'll support them and with this unconditional positive regard, and you bring that to your family and friends too. And then you beautifully said you want people to feel recharged by this light you bring. And then I went, I wonder how Tessa fills up, like how do you recharge yourself? Because you promote self-care, self-love, having routines in place, and we'll definitely get into your mental health journey as well. But what do you do to make sure you can show up that way for people?
This has been something that I'm recently trying to get better at. I have personally been in a state of burnout for quite some time. I think just after this competition season and doing a big rebranding with my business, being there for my friends, and just I feel like 2022 really hit a lot of people hard. I feel like we're all really going through it right now. I've definitely noticed that I'm having a difficult time recharging, but some of the things that I do like to do is I really love listening to podcasts and going on really long walks and just having that alone time where I can kind of correct my own thoughts, because I feel it's very easy to get mental burnout, especially when you're a source of positivity for so many people and you have many people relying on you. Like, I know I have a lot of clients who rely on me and, confide in me and vent to me. And I absolutely want to be there for them. But it is hard, when you're constantly taking that emotional toll. And you can see this a lot in the medical system, actually. If you really look at doctors and nurses, not comparing myself to doctors and nurses at all, but if you look at that, and you'll see there's a huge lack of empathy, and that's due to emotional burnout. Nurses and doctors have less and less compassion for patients because they deal with so much. They deal with so much trauma and so much um, emotional hardship, that it's difficult for them to be there for every single person. So some things that I try to do to recharge myself so that I can be there for the people who I care about is I honestly just need my time alone. I like my podcasts, I like my walks. I love playing with my animals. Like, being around my animals just makes me so happy. I love journaling and I love reading. I love writing, all of those ways that I can just express myself and correct my own thought patterns. Sometimes I get into a very negative headspace, and I can tell because I'm not Sunshine Tessa anymore. My friends sometimes refer to me as Sunshine because I'm very bubbly and happy and positive, and I kind of like radiate that onto others. But sometimes I can tell when I'm not my best self. And that's typically when I need to take a step back and be like, okay, what does Tessa need right now? Whether that's a book or a podcast, or even just to sit with my own thoughts for like 2 hours.
That's so beautiful. And I appreciate how open you're being, which I had no doubt you would be, but I just want to really say thank you for being so open, because a lot of the times people who are givers in this way, and including myself working as a helping professional, and any service-based provider is likely going to experience these things. Um, and sometimes too, I've been called sunshine by my friends, or like light, and like I spread all this positivity and it's amazing and it's beautiful, and I'm grateful for my friends for acknowledging that about me. And sometimes though it does feel like pressure. I don't know if you've ever experienced
Yeah,
that, you know?
absolutely.
You're like, "Oh, I'm the sunshine friend? Well, hold on, like, I feel like a shadow today, I feel so dark, I don't even I'm not worthy." But then, like, you're right, that's, like, one of those red flags almost, where if I start getting in that mental state, I address it, and I I mean, I help competitors with their mental health, so I'm constantly doing the mental side of things, and when I was working as a counselor, we were taken through where we, could complete different workshops, and one of the ones I did was on compassion fatigue and burnout, and something
Yeah.
they had reported, and I think this applies to coaches like yourself too, especially with how much you're giving, not just to your clients, but even an indirect impact that you make. It's like those who have maladaptive coping mechanisms or lower levels of mindfulness, they actually struggle more with the fatigue and with the burnout versus those who have positive coping skills like you've identified for yourself, the mindfulness in order to say, hey, I'm recognizing this is what's happening, and then like an attitude of wanting to continuously be compassionate and wanting to feel positive about their work. Those people end up having less burnout or fatigue because they have attuned themselves to be proactive, and it sounds like that's what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with the compassion fatigue. And that's what I was getting at when I was mentioning like doctors and nurses. It's actually in the book that I'm reading right now, Social Intelligence. There's a
Oh.
chapter on that about compassion fatigue. And it's not just doctors and nurses and people in the medical field, it's any service based employment, whether you're a counselor or a coach or something that you're providing a service to somebody. It can be very, very easy to just go and have a mindset of like, okay, I'm going to solve this problem, then go to the next problem without actually getting to know the patient or the client and make them feel heard and seen and validated. And I know there's a lot of coaches in the fitness industry where, you know, you're just a client, you're just another number, you're just another trophy, and you're not really a person. Um, and it's very unfortunate that that's happening. But I think finding a good coach, and also if you are a coach, being a good coach is very important. And I take a lot of my previous coaching experiences, good and bad, and I put that into how I want to treat people who are coming to me for help. I want to make sure people feel seen and heard and validated, whether that's the way that, their relationship with food or whatever is going on their mental health. I make sure I address all of those things because I also know how it feels to have those things go, just swept under the rug. And it's not a good feeling. And I don't want any of my clients to feel that way.
Hmm. I think that's so important, like to be able to validate yourself and support yourself emotionally so that you can then show up for others and provide them with that encouragement, with that recognition, with them knowing like it's okay that you're dealing with this or you've been through this, or even just being able to acknowledge something really cool that they've done or they've expressed versus like you said, treating them like a number or a trophy. And hearing you say that, I was like, have you ever experienced that? Like maybe you could detail for us some of the negative coaching experiences, some of the positive ones, and how that's informed your view on yourself through this sport
Yeah,
as well as your view as a coach.
absolutely. So I think I was 16 years old when I got my very first coach. And I genuinely do not want to speak negatively about anybody, but there are for sure certain situations and scenarios that I wish I hadn't been placed in, especially at such a young age. Especially when it comes to eating disorders and dieting and stuff like that. Being that young, I know I myself, I'm the person who makes the decisions. I decided to compete. I decided to get a coach. And I know that this is not the most healthy thing to do, especially
Mhm.
being a competitor. It's definitely not like a health and wellness competition. It's bodybuilding. And that doesn't always mean health. But there were certain situations that definitely triggered a lot of things for me. Like I developed binge eating disorder after my first 2 years in bodybuilding due to heavily restricting, wanting to basically be perfect with macronutrients. I became very obsessive with food. And that led me down a very destructive path with binging, occasionally purging. That's something that I've struggled with over the years with multiple coaches.
When I earned my bachelor's degree in psychology and went on to earn my clinical mental health counseling degree and even become a national certified counselor, I knew I wanted to bridge the gap between competitors and mental health professionals. Too often, athletes are told that they can't compete and have a healthy relationship with food or their body, and I absolutely disagree with that. I have helped thousands of women globally to build more than just a body by combining psychology, personal development, mindfulness, and my signature peace through growth process. If you are struggling with the post-show blues, or you're struggling with adherence to your prep, or any aspect of your relationship with food, your body image, or overall commitment to your goals, I have tons of resources available for you over at www.celestial.fit. Things like a free food relationship coaching series, free post-show blues coaching series, a full competitor card deck with statements to use for affirmations, journal prompts to go through, and even action and behavior changes that you can implement right away. I really believe that by prioritizing the inner work and developing a healthy mindset, competitors can have a more fulfilling journey. And I know the mental side of this sport is really key to establishing longevity, ending the yo-yoing from show to show, and really establishing goals that span well beyond the stage. If you're looking for that support, head over to www.celestial.fit, where you can find tons of free resources or even apply to work with me.
Another experience that I had was shortly after I lost my father. It almost was like I had tunnel vision, and I would do whatever it took to win my pro card. And a coach that I worked with saw that in me and saw that I had that work ethic, that I had that drive. I was relentless. Like I wasn't going to stop. And I think that was kind of taken advantage of a little bit, because by the end of that competition season, I was fried. But I would have kept going. And, to a coach, and they see that, a good coach and a bad coach will do very different things in that situation. And I'm grateful that I was pushed to my absolute limit, because my final show that I did that year, I won my pro card. And the coach that I am referring to, we actually have a very good relationship now. We're good friends. We talk all the time. We support each other. I have a new coach now, and I saw the difference right away, especially this competition season. I could tell my mental health was starting to decline, and I was starting to face challenges that, I couldn't face being in a deficit. I couldn't face being 100 pounds. I needed to have regular Tessa back in order to face the things that were going on in my life at that time. And my coach, my current coach, Braden, he sat me down and he had a conversation with me. He said, Tessa, I know you want to keep competing. I know you want to qualify for the Olympia. And I know that you can do it. But right now, we need to take a break, because I know mentally that you're just not there. Like you're not there anymore. And I'm not going to push you and make you keep doing this, because we have some other stuff we need to work on right now. And that was really hard for me, because I wanted to go to the Olympia. I wanted to keep competing, but I asked myself honestly, even if I did qualify for the Olympia this year, would I have been able to diet for another 16 weeks? And I knew immediately the answer was no. And Braden saw that, and he decided to cut the cord, and we ended my prep after my last show in August, which was the Texas Pro Show.
That right there is such a great example, by the way, of the difference between a responsible coach versus not. And I was just not saying that your other coach didn't also didn't think they had your best interest at heart, because they probably wanted what you wanted so badly, which was the pro card.
Mm-hmm.
And they did see that opportunity to capitalize on a time in your life where you were willing to maybe even die for it, if you want to go to that extreme. Because as competitors, it does feel that way, especially after actually experiencing loss or big challenges in our life. I think we're willing to we channel that energy in sometimes extreme ways that can put us at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really great how you detailed that, because I was just talking to someone the other day about how, on some level, a lot of it is the athlete's responsibility. Like, we're choosing that, but also if we hire someone with that trust and belief that they will keep our best interest at heart, and we've communicated what that is, and maybe that's mental health, emotional health, physical health, like, we would want to trust that they'll do that. And so I think it's really cool you're able to use those experiences to actually improve and then better support yourself. And you recognize that's a strength of yours to push in that way. And it's probably why you've become so successful and you are ambitious. On the other side of things, our strengths can also sometimes be our downfalls. So having someone who can recognize that and have a real conversation about it is awesome. But something that stood out to me, you said you could tell your mental health was on the decline. What were some of those red flags you personally were recognizing?
So my prep this year was honestly the best prep that I've ever done. I felt so motivated. I I had like tunnel vision, but it was in a good way. Like, I was still taking very good care of my clients. I was hanging out with my friends. Everything was amazing. It was like a walk in the park until I did my first show, which was the Vancouver Pro Show, where I placed fourth. After that, I actually got into a relationship. And I had just gotten out of like a 3-year long-term relationship with somebody who I just absolutely fell in love with. And this new relationship was like my first time giving commitment a try again. Me just kind of going into the dating field and being like, okay, yeah, sure. And it was like sunshine and rainbows for 2 weeks. And then it wasn't. And I took that so hard. It was devastating to me because I had not yet processed the heartbreak that was still lying underneath from my previous relationship. I was still processing, grieving my father. And it was very overwhelming. And, to be in a prep and to be that lean, that restricted, and having a companion by your side for 2 weeks, it was like everything was so easy because he was also on prep. We did everything together. And then suddenly we figured out, this isn't working. It's not going to work. And as quickly as it started, it ended. And then suddenly I was back prepping by myself, except this time it was so challenging because I had gotten comfortable having that companion by my side. I let my guard down. I let myself ease back a little bit. I stopped doing my gratitude journals. I stopped listening to my podcasts. I put so much reliance on this person, and then they were just quickly out of my life. And then as soon as that happened, I started to fall apart. And I could tell that was like, the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. And not to blame anything on anybody, it was 100% my responsibility because I stopped taking care of myself during that time that I was in that relationship because I had somebody else taking care of me. And I forgot to take care of Tessa. And I think that was my biggest mistake and what led to the end of my prep, because I started to get into this internal panic. Cardio became very difficult to do, whereas before it was just another box that I checked off. It wasn't really anything that I thought about. Training, cardio, all of that stuff was very easy for me until it wasn't, because my mind wasn't as strong as it was. It was like something just switched in my head, and all of a sudden I was overwhelmed. I was burnt out. I was tired. Everything was difficult. And that wasn't necessarily because my body was tired. I knew my body could keep going. It was my mental health that led to the end of my prep.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, sometimes we can keep pushing and pushing, like physically, right? Like, we know we can achieve new limits and challenge our bodies, but if it's at the sacrifice or the cost of our mental, then we know we won't be able to sustain those results or even feel good about it when we get to the end of it, if we felt that bad
Yeah.
mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. It just became it was just becoming very destructive. Like I would cry every single day. I was getting very emotional. I was starting to get very scary thoughts. And I was actually suicidal in high school. I admitted myself into the psych ward to a hospital because I was genuinely so afraid of just existing. Like I had debilitating anxiety. I would have panic attacks where I would start vomiting up stomach bile. And I know that's very detailed, but that's how bad my panic attacks would be and my anxiety attacks. And it got to the point where I didn't even want to be alive anymore. So I admitted myself to the psych ward. And during the end of my prep, I started to have very similar thought patterns to when I was in the most difficult time of my life. And that started to give me anxiety in itself. Like I was having anxiety about my anxiety being like, oh no, like we're going this
Yes.
space again where I've worked so hard to get out of. But I think every competitor can agree when you get down to that level, your mental strength has to outshine everything, because if you aren't mentally strong enough to combat those negative thoughts and those limiting beliefs and those anxieties, it'll take you down so fast.
Oh, yes, girl. I feel like we're speaking the same language. I'm loving this so much. I feel so fulfilled right now. I just want to
Oh,
express that openly. Like, I'm feeling so good doing this with you because everything you're saying, I've known for a while. I can relate to you and your story. And like, I had a similar experience in high school myself. I became very suicidal. I was feeling so much darkness. And I had that same experience of fearing myself. Like I literally feared the anxiety and the depression. I actually, now I'm not a big believer in diagnoses and I even work in the field, but that's besides the point. But like I had anxiety of my depression. Like I was
yeah,
so scared, like when is it going to come on or why am I feeling this way? And then when you have any sort of emotion reminiscent of the darkest time in your life, it can be extremely overwhelming.
absolutely. I remember it was so bad. I think I was in peak week for Texas, and something was going on, and I want to respect the person and not share too much about what was going on, but something was going on where I had my trust in somebody and they were deliberately doing something behind my back and I knew about it.
Mm.
And that was manifesting as the most aggressive anxiety. And it felt like I was trapped in my body. I felt very helpless. And I think that feeling of being helpless strikes a chord with me, as I'm sure it would with anybody, especially, suffering a loss. I was helpless to that. There was nothing that I could have done. So that feeling of being helpless, that is a huge trigger for me. And in that moment, I felt helpless. And I think, had a bit of a breakdown. And I ended up telling my coach about this. And this is where we had that conversation. Well, you know, maybe we should end prep. But immediately my mind went to self harm. And that's something from my past that I've worked so hard to overcome. I've I have scars. I've done things that I wish I didn't do. And when I was in that sensitive mindset and I was at my weakest this past prep and I had that thought of self-harm and wanting to hurt myself because I couldn't escape that feeling of being trapped and helpless, that's when I knew I can't do this to myself. I have to put an end to this, because if I'm not okay mentally, how am I going to perform well physically? There's no coherence there. There's no brain heart coherence there. I need to fix that so that I can come back stronger next time. And I accepted that this year was not my year, even though I had a very good competition season, like placing fourth in my pro debut, like that was amazing. I
Mhm.
just accepted that I wasn't my strongest this year. Even though this was my best package to date, this wasn't the best Tessa that it could have brought.
Yeah, and had you continued to push, you might have actually risked the potential of the best Tessa in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think part of being a good athlete is knowing when your body and mind need to rest. I think nowadays, especially with hustle culture, the I'll sleep when I'm dead type mindset. I think that can be very destructive. And I think that's why you see so many competitors earn their pro cards and then you never hear from them again. They never step on stage again because they're tired, because they pushed so hard that they're literally not able to come back from that. And I think that's what being a good long term, like something sustainable, is knowing when you need to take 2 steps back so that in the future you can take 3 steps forward.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of the times the reason why people don't pull back when they know that they should is because they want to rush the process or the outcome rather than really relish in that experience. And I think we can get ahead of ourselves, right? Like if I've already come this far, if I can just push further, like you said, the hustle culture mentality. And
Mm-hmm.
it's great in many ways if it pushes you to new levels and heights, but if it comes at the risk or the cost of other things that would actually support you in sustaining it, then it's not worth it. And something you've demonstrated really beautifully is this commitment and this passion for all phases of bodybuilding and all phases of this sport. Like you had this really successful prep, you pulled out at a time where it was necessary. You've shared how you've had difficulties in the past with post show and rebounds and even relapses, and talking about your mental health as well. But how have you come to embrace every phase of bodybuilding and really respect and appreciate the preps and the improvement seasons?
I think honestly, it's about enjoying life, no matter if you're prepping or off season or whatever you're doing. I think as long as you are a happy individual and you're enjoying your life and you're actually passionate about the things that you do, I think that's what makes the whole process just that much more enjoyable. Because at the end of the day, this is a passion for all of us. Like we do this because we love it. But a lot of the time, it can be very difficult because I think we kind of lose sight of what's important. And at the end of the day, what's important is experiencing joy. And I feel a lot of the time we're not actually experiencing joy. We're forcing ourselves to do things because we are expected to or we need to because we hold ourselves to this standard. And then you see very successful people but they're very miserable because they've forgotten the most important part. And it's just having those experiences, experiencing joy, taking every single scenario or situation you're in and really just being there and being present. I honestly, I love off season and I love prep. I love every single part of it because it's almost like the change of seasons, like in a year. I'm not a person who's like, oh, I hate winter. I only love summer. No, I love winter. I love everything that it brings. I love being cozy. I love reading. I love the fire. I love spring because there's new beginnings. I love summer because obviously it's beautiful. I love fall. Like, I think there's something beautiful in every single thing. And I apply that to bodybuilding and I apply that to every other thing in my life. If I am enjoying myself and just truly experiencing joy and being happy, then everything just kind of happens as it's meant to.
Absolutely. And I love how you prioritize joy. It sounds like that's a core value of yours that you maintain focus on so that way you don't lose sight of it.
Absolutely. And I think I really struggled for a long time trying to find what happiness was because I feel like it's very confusing. Like, what's the right recipe for happiness? How do I become a happy person? And I don't think that it is normal to be happy all of the time. However, I do think happiness is joy continuously experienced. If you can just have continuous joy, I think that is what leads to a happy life.
When do you know you are experiencing joy?
That's a very good question. I think, and this kind of ties back to when my friends call me Sunshine Tessa, because I will just be so, like radiating with positivity, just having a good time. I think when I'm experiencing joy, it's when I'm truly just lost in a moment and I'm not thinking about what I have to do tomorrow morning or what I need to do next month or, tax season is coming up. I'm just lost in the moment and I'm just truly having a good time. It's one of those moments where you forget about everything, and you're just living, and you're in that you're just existing in that moment, and it's just you. And I think those are the moments that we really need to cherish, because you don't know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. And yes, I got that quote from SpongeBob.
I love SpongeBob. It's my favorite. That's freaking awesome, girl. It's true though, like in all seriousness, that is 100% right. And when we look back on our life, it is like the habits we have, it's the rituals we have, it's the routines we have, it's how we spend the majority of our time that makes up our life. And if the majority of our time is spent always wishing for more, wanting for more, or being physically doing one thing while mentally being somewhere else, we'll get to a place where we look back, we're like, I wish I would have just been in that moment.
Exactly. And I think after earning my pro card, that was a huge slap of reality, because after I won my pro card, I actually fell into the worst depression of my life. Um, I hadn't processed, losing my dad. There was a lot of things that I didn't process. So when I finally won my pro card, I was like, oh, my life is going to change. Everything's going to be great. I'm going to be happy. No, nothing changed. Nothing changed. I was just a pro athlete, and I still had all of my problems. I still had all the struggles. And I think if I could just go back, the one thing I would tell myself is just stop worrying about if you're going to get it or not, or what's going on. Like, just genuinely be there and enjoy the process. Stop trying to rush to one accomplishment after the next, because I think as competitors, we're very hard on ourselves. And, once you get to one milestone, you don't even really celebrate it. You're already on to the next. Like, once you turn pro, it's okay. And now I got to win a pro show. Then I got to go to the Olympia. And it goes up and up and up. And it's like, you're never satisfied. You're never satisfied with your accomplishments. Enough is never enough. And if you live your life like that, you'll never be content. You'll never be happy. Because you're always thinking into the future. You're never actually participating in the present. And participating in the present is where your life is actually going to be lived.
That's exactly right. And especially if you know that it could end at any moment and it could be taken from you at any moment or from someone else who is important to you, it really does help you like immerse into the present more and actually enjoy a lot of those experiences more, even as you detailed right in the beginning of the episode of like how you ground yourself before you step on stage, and that supports you in having a better experience. And that applies to all of these other things, all these other parts of your life, even outside of competing, but even with consideration for competing. You did say you earned your pro card, and it's not like this gold platter fell from the sky and gave you all the peace and comfort you needed. In
Yeah,
reality, it was like, hey, this, you've been focused on this for a long time, awesome, you got it, but like look at all the things that you had ignored in that process. So I'm wondering,
exactly.
like, did that experience of ignoring some of those things dictate how you approach preps now? Like, are you more cognizant of those emotional experiences happening?
Oh, absolutely. So when I won my pro card in 2019, it was like a tidal wave was coming at me, because I ignored so many things. I put my father's death to the back burner and just basically used the pro card as like a carrot dangling, and I was just running as fast as I could towards it. And meanwhile, I have all these things holding me back, or I'm dragging along with me, uh, that when I finally get that carrot, or I finally get that goal, those things are there and they've accumulated a lot of weight. And now I have to work on untying those and unraveling them and dealing with them. So I took 3 years off from that, because I needed to physically recover. I needed to mentally recover. So coming into my prep this year, I did have a lot of anxiety, because I was like, okay, I know what I did last time. I know that was wrong. And I know that I need to be very, very open and honest with myself about the challenges going on. If, my mental health starts to slip, like I can't put things on the back burner, because I refuse to do that to myself again. Like, I have too much respect for myself to do that to future Tessa. So this time around, I did my gratitude journals. I started journaling every morning, actually. So I would do 1 page gratitude journal. And then on the other page, I would just write out my thoughts. I would write down what's bothering me, how I was feeling emotionally, what I was looking forward to. I would just get all of my thoughts and feelings out so that they weren't just, you know, shoved aside in my brain, and I could get them out. If I needed to talk to someone, I would. I think I saw a therapist a few times throughout. Like I really did everything that I could um, to deal with everything that was going on internally throughout this prep. And I think that's why, for the majority of it, I truly was really just having a good time. Like I wasn't struggling. I was pretty much sailing through. And then external events started happening. And, sometimes it does get a little bit overwhelming when you have those things going on and you're in a depleted state. And it kind of brought me back to when my father had died and they told me, and I kind of just shut down. But instead, this time, when something traumatic happened to me during this prep, I was so emotionally aware of myself that I couldn't shut down. And instead, I started to emotionally react and almost became self destructive in the opposite way that I had previously. So it was like I kind of shot too much forward, so that was the reason why ultimately I was like, okay, I'm going to choose to respect myself here and I'm going to put prep to an end, which I think ultimately was the best decision that I did make.
Yeah, absolutely. So you utilize like your past experience of shutting down to then allow yourself to remain open and present with yourself throughout this entire experience, enough so where you could address it ahead of time, or at least
Mm-hmm.
vocalize those concerns and then address it. And you did mention you had taken those 3 years off, and that's something I wanted to discuss with you as well. Like, what is it that led you to taking the 3 years away? And did you think you were done competing, or did you have the thought process of I'll be back?
So when I won my pro cards, honestly, I was not expecting it to come that early. I was honestly ready to devote the next like 5 to 10 years of my life into getting that pro card. I didn't care what it took. I was going to get it. And then I ended up getting it a lot earlier than I anticipated. And that kind of shocked me. So I didn't really have any plans of competing anytime soon after winning my pro card. The reason I took so much time off is because that's when I really fell into my eating disorder and I fell into binge eating, and I rebounded 40 pounds after winning my pro card. And this is something that I speak very openly about. It's not something that I'm ashamed of. I've really come to terms with what happened. And I have a lot of compassion for myself during that time because I feel like I truly did the best that I could with what I knew at the time. And so rebounding 40 pounds, and I'm sure if anybody listening to this has rebounded before, you know how uncomfortable it is to be in your own body. It feels like you're almost just like trapped. And it's very hard to look at yourself in the mirror, especially after having just won a pro card, because I'm like, well,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
supposed to be representing like, the best in the industry. And here I am rebounding and struggling. And I felt like I had failed. And for a long time, I really struggled with those feelings. Like I said, I was going through a very deep depression as well, because it was like the death of my dad was finally kicking in. So many things were happening. And then throughout that, I was obviously binge eating through that and rebounding very difficult. So throughout the 3 years, I was like, okay, I can't do another prep to fix this problem, because this is
Mm-hmm.
this is what caused the problem in the first place. Like severe restriction, using as a distraction. Like I can't do that. That's not how we're not gonna fix a problem with a problem. So I actually had to stop dieting entirely and just eat whatever. Like I literally put my food scale away. I let go of that need for control, because when you rebound, it's almost like you lose that bit of control, because we get a sense of feeling in control and power from eating well and going to the gym and controlling our body composition. And it felt like I had lost that control. So I said, you know what, tired of trying to control a situation that is clearly just working against me. The more I try and control it, like the more I try and hold on to it tighter and tighter, it's pushing back and it's fighting against me. So I finally put the food scale away. I finally stopped tracking my food and I just started eating whatever I wanted and listening to my hunger cues and listening to my body. Throughout that, I was actually in school for nutrition to become a sports performance and nutrition specialist so that I could start my own coaching business. And throughout that, I learned so much about the human body. I learned so much about metabolism. I learned so much about what was happening to me. And I actually started to apply what I was learning into my day to day, into my eating habits. I started focusing on fermented foods. I started focusing on digestion instead of calories in, calories out. And in turn, I had the most incredible change in body composition. I wasn't stepping on a scale. I wasn't purposely trying to lose weight. I had accepted that, my body weight and my body composition was where it was at. And I was actually very comfortable with it. I learned to appreciate other aspects of me and what I bring to the table aside from being lean and shredded and, having a six pack all the time. And throughout that, I started to focus on my actual health and well-being. And as a result of that, my body followed in pursuit. And I would say last summer, I was fully intuitively eating and I was eating like 3 to 4,000 calories a day. I think I tracked it once. And I was just out of curiosity and being like, oh, wow, like I actually reverse dieted myself, focused on digestion, focused on my health, and really focused on my mindset. And I would say I was in the healthiest place mentally and physically after having rebounded and dealt with grief and dealt with, breakups and all of that. I was finally at a place where I felt so at home in my own body. And that's when I knew that I was ready to do another competition. And I reached out to a new coach, Braden, and I was like, this is it. I'm ready to do it again. And that's what led us to competing this year.
Wow. What an amazing journey that you have been on. And I imagine through this process, you've just learned so much about yourself and your needs and your body. And the key takeaways I heard from that I want to kind of reiterate, because I think they're very important, is you applied nutritional knowledge to your decisions. So it wasn't just about macros and physique goals. It was also, how's my body feel? What am I nourishing myself with? That's one thing that I definitely like to instill in my clients as well. It's like, you got to consider food and eating outside of just fuel, right? It is fuel, yes, but there's so many other purposes for it. And we have to recognize that it's benefiting us in many ways. And then I also heard you say there was a lot more just mindfulness, like you stepped away from letting the diet be the control, and instead something I like to say is like, control is the perceived need, but congruency is the real desire. So you let go of the need for control, you established congruency with what you really wanted and what you were needing at that time in your life. You did not repeat the cycle, and I really want to drive this point home. You did not repeat the cycle of using prep to fix it. Instead, you went internally and you're like, what needs to shift? And I think there's a lot of shame some competitors experience with being open about their struggles, because they're like, well, I'm supposed to be this fit, healthy person who doesn't eat XYZ, or who isn't seen doing ABC, or who never struggles with this. And it just perpetuates that story in the industry that things have to be so strict and hardcore, rather than like, it can be your lifestyle. It can be more sustainable. It can be very freeing. It can be fulfilling. So you took that journey, and it sounds like you've really created or established something that's more fulfilling for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've just been very accepting with situations. Like I've just learned to, take things as they come, and it's not the end of the world if something doesn't happen as I expect. And, I think the one thing that I really pride myself in is my ability to take a problem and just do everything I can to solve it. And, some problems can't be solved, and that's fine. But I really think that being able to solve problems as they come and find solutions is a much better tactic than just kind of like plowing through everything and just kind of dealing with the aftermath afterwards. Like, no, I want to take these problems as they approach themselves, find the best solution, and then move forward.
Love that. Acceptance is so key as it allows us to really, again, be present in the moment and then move forward. And it's amazing that you've been able to foster that for yourself. And plus, I feel like that reduces a lot of criticism and instead allows for more compassion.
Exactly. And I feel, we're all our own worst critics. And, when we're constantly hard on ourselves, it's really not helping us get any better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I imagine that's also probably influential in how you approach coaching your clients, like not with that you suck type of approach or you're a failure or I can't believe you did that, but instead like, okay, let's learn from this.
Yeah. I mean, something that I do, and I have noticed with my clients, they're their own worst critics. They'll say, if they have a bad week, they'll beat themselves up. But something that I do is I say, okay, well, let's say, if you fell off the meal plan or you fell off your macros, what did you do this week that is getting you closer towards that goal? Like, what boxes did you check? Oh, you got your steps in and you drank 3 liters of water every single day. Okay. And you hit a new PR on hip thrust. You went to the gym 4 days this week. Like, there's so many things that we do that are positive, but we tend to only focus on the negative. And then we live in that narrative of, oh, I wasn't perfect. Therefore, I'm not going to succeed, or I'm not doing as good as I could be, when really sometimes giving 100%, it looks different every single day. Sometimes it's going to the gym 4 days a week. Sometimes it's going to the gym 1 day a week. So it just depends. And I really take into account the mental side of coaching, especially when building a sustainable lifestyle, because I'm not going to lie, like, I, when I'm having a difficult time, it's very difficult for me to go to the gym and really get into that mindset to push hard. Sometimes there is more healing in just staying home and staying with the people you love instead of pushing yourself and forcing yourself to be uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And you're gonna likely feel that discomfort either way. So it's like, do we want to feel discomfort that's gonna be resolved in a matter of like 2 seconds through a maladaptive coping mechanism or by just like numbing ourselves? Or do we want to do something even more uncomfortable, which is face it, but then relieves discomfort in the long run?
Exactly. And I'm not necessarily saying, like, be comfortable, skip the gym, but there's a time and a place. And I feel if you just have a conversation with someone and you're genuinely like, okay, what do you need right now? Like, what would make you feel better? Going to the gym and taking it out on the weights, or just sitting with yourself and kind of like processing this information. I think that's very important too, because like I said, it's going to look different every single day. And it's also not a one size fits all. And I know me as a fitness professional and a coach being like, well, it's okay to stay home and like skip your workout. That might be taken the wrong way, but I feel like it can be very reassuring for a lot of people, because I feel more often than not, you have so many people and, young girls in specific forcing themselves to go to the gym and forcing themselves to train when they just need a rest mentally and physically. And I used to be that girl. I used to be that girl in the gym 6, 7 days a week. Um, and I burnt myself out to the point where, I didn't have the mental strength to deal with the problems that were about to face me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we see it even with trends right now, like people saying to just literally go to the gym and put the anxiety or the mental health issue into the muscle. And it's like, well, that's not going to work long term.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Like, and there's a lot of memes about it too. It's like, what's the secret sauce for getting your best physique? It's like chronic depression. Like, no, go to therapy.
exactly. Oh my gosh, yes. Like gym is awesome for alone time or processing things or getting present, or maybe even coping with anxiety in the sense that we're doing progressive muscle relaxation in a controlled setting. But at the
Mhm.
same time, like, if you're going through something, the longer you avoid it, the bigger the anxiety becomes, because the problem only gets bigger. And then you're almost creating this shortcut in your mind that whatever coping skill you're using, whether that's forcing yourself to go to the gym, or it's eating poorly or not eating at all, or harming yourself in some way, you're creating a shortcut between your brain and relief. So then
Mhm.
instead of finding something that's sustainable or actually is proactive relief, your brain's always going to turn to the less productive long-term relief, but it's something that brings that immediate peace. So even though people are like, I'm strong and I'm better than you because I go to the gym and take my problems out there, it's like, yeah, but what's going to happen when this problem gets bigger and bigger, and you have no idea what your emotional needs are? You can't communicate those needs. You're feeling incredibly overwhelmed. As you experienced, Tessa, you won your pro card, and then it was a tidal wave of all these things that had been swept under the rug.
Yeah, exactly. And then, dealing with that, I took 3 years off to deal with that. So, and that was actually something that my coach said to me, when we were having this discussion about ending my prep. He said, "I would much rather end your prep right now so that we can have the best season ever next year, instead of pushing you to burnout and then having to take 2 to 3 years off to recover from that because
Exactly.
mentally you're not able to give anymore." And I sat with that and I thought about it and I was like, "You know what? You're absolutely right." And in that, I was content with ending my prep, even though, when you're in prep, you kind of have that tunnel vision and you're like, "I'll just do whatever it takes to get to my goal." And
Yeah.
I'll compete in all the shows. Like, you see people competing for like 12 months straight, and you're like, "Okay, that can't be good." So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what's going on under the surface there? Like, there's nothing happening. But it's, I mean, if you could do it, great. And especially if you've established like the ability to, and it's healthy and all that. But it also reminds me of your decision earlier to let go of dieting mentality for a bit. And it reminds me of like that process of exposure. And when you say, okay, would I rather push myself for another, let's say, 3 months to get Olympia qualified, or maybe compete in XYZ amount of shows more, but then have barely anything left to give to the sport and not actually bring my best? Or do I want to trust and believe full-heartedly that if what I want, I will have eventually, and it's better to set myself up for that future success than it is to like almost have that scarcity mindset that we see people
Mhm.
eating, like food, for example. Like, I'm just going to eat 20 Oreos because I'm never going to eat them again, versus like just have it once every day and you'll be fine. But you know what I'm saying? It's like you're seeing that by taking the step back, it's actually even an affirmation that you believe in the journey you're going on, and so much so that you're willing to step away to support that version of yourself who ultimately achieves it.
Absolutely. And honestly, like, I truly believe when I step on stage, I I want to be transparent. I want the judges to see not only my physique and my hard work, but also who I am as a person. And you can see that. I truly believe you can see that when people are on stage. You can see if somebody is struggling emotionally. Um, and for example, like this past Olympia, I believe that you could see things like that. You could see who was on stage, who was radiating, and you could see people who, had been through some very unfortunate things, and you could kind of see their mental state shine on stage. And I knew if I were to continue competing, I wouldn't be bringing the best version of myself. If I did qualify for the Olympia, I wouldn't be bringing the best version of me, the best Tessa to that stage. And that's not something that I want to do because then it takes away my integrity. So I think by taking that step back and being like, you know what? I have so much faith in myself that I know my time is coming and I'm going to get a head start on my improvement season so that when I come back, I'm going to make a statement and I'm going to be a lethal competitor. I I felt so at peace with that decision because I've instilled that belief in myself.
That's beautiful. I actually have never heard someone say lethal competitor. You're
I want
out
to
for
be
blood or something? That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that. You're so passionate. And I love how you use the word transparent, by the way, because you're a very transparent person. So being able to show that on stage will be really rewarding. And I imagine this improvement season has been better because it was proactive. But I know you've expressed there's been ups and downs even after this most recent season. And you've been very open about the differences between like reversing versus rebounding and how you've had overcome these difficulties with disordered eating in the past. And I was wondering how you personally feel when you open up about those things. Like, does it change your own perspective on yourself, knowing now like it's so transparent and so many people do see that side of you?
I think when I first opened up about it this year, after I did have my relapse, I mean, when I had my relapse, I woke up the next morning and I was almost in disbelief because I was like, there's no way that happened again. Like, no way. It wasn't a binge and purge, it was just a binge. But still, because I had been so successful with my reverse diet and I stayed shredded for a very long time. Like I was sticking to my reverse diet like glue. And then I had this night where everything just kind of fell apart. I felt because I was sticking to my reverse diet so well, and I had people commenting on it. They're like, wow, you're really doing a great job this time. And it was that like, this
I
time.
know that's what I just thought when you said that. I was like, ew, I can't.
Yeah. It kind of added a layer of pressure where I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I need to be perfect. Like I can't F up. Like I made a mistake last time. I can't do that again. And I think that was just kind of manifesting as like so much pressure and anxiety. And then I started to kind of be hard on myself. Like if I would eat like sometimes, because I would get really hungry during my reverse, just because
Mhm.
obviously like you're up regulating your metabolism, you're going to be more hungry, you're training harder. I would eat like a bowl of cottage cheese before bed outside of my plan, and I would beat myself up over that. And I think it just got to the point where I was under so much pressure, and I was also just like aggravating my own pressure, like adding this pressure onto myself, that one night it just happened. And the next morning I was in shock, and I was really hard on myself for like maybe 30 minutes. But then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to beat myself up because that is all I did last time. Like
Yeah.
last time around when I won my pro card, is all I did. I was my own worst enemy. How am I going to be here to actually support myself so that this doesn't happen again? And I decided to speak up about it on social media because I personally have such a difficult time showing up on social media being like, hey guys, everything's awesome. And I'm super happy when I'm really not. If I'm struggling, I want to say something. And I have received some backlash actually. I have received,
Backlash? What does that
yeah,
sound like?
well, people just being like, oh, you're always complaining and you're so privileged and you should be grateful for what you have. And then I kind of take that as like, well, if you knew anything about me, you'd know that I do practice gratitude every single morning. So, that really doesn't mean anything to me. But it almost kind of makes me feel like I should just be quiet and not talk about my struggles and not kind of be uncomfortable sharing what's going on, because it is truly very uncomfortable, like making a video talking about, hey, I just had a relapse in my eating disorder. And it's not one of those stories where it's like, yeah, I overcame this. It's more so, no, I'm currently actively struggling with this. It's very difficult to come online and say something like that, especially because I want to represent somebody who's strong, who's overcome things, who has overcome many struggles. But to be actively struggling and to be openly sharing about that, it's very difficult. It's uncomfortable. But I'm very glad that I did, because I probably received over 200 messages when I posted that video of other competitors and other people being like, I'm so glad you posted this because I feel so much more or less alone. And that's why I've always been an advocate for mental health, and I'll always speak up about things, especially when I am struggling, because it makes people feel less alone. And even that can help someone so much, just knowing that they're not the only person experiencing those dreadful feelings or having those relapses, or having those moments where they don't feel their strongest self. it can help so much.
Absolutely. And I think it's amazing to have people in the industry like yourself who do speak openly about those experiences, whether it's in retrospect or it's in the present. It definitely helps other people to see that, as you said, they're not alone, or that you can still live and exist and be enough as you are. And when you accept those parts of yourself or you own them, it actually reduces a lot of the pain that comes with it, because we can eliminate some of the shame just by speaking about it. And
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah, it turns it into like a beneficial experience versus one that overcomes us and defines us.
exactly. And I think when I was younger, I always used to look at IFBB pros and, Miss Olympia and top 5 at the Olympia and be like, oh, I wish I could accomplish that. But I have all these mental struggles and I struggle with my mental health and I have an eating disorder. And, I could never accomplish those things because, those girls must be so lucky they don't struggle. But in reality, everybody struggles. It's just not really talked about as much. So I think with my social media, I want to talk about it because there could be a young girl out there who's struggling with debilitating anxiety and an eating disorder. And, her dream is to get up on the Olympia stage. And she might feel discouraged because, maybe her situation, her environment isn't ideal to make that happen. But I kind of want to be that source of hope for people who are struggling with their mental health and potentially an eating disorder or whatever your struggles may be, whether you lost someone, whether you grew up in poverty, whatever your situation is. I want to be a person who can, give hope to those people and show that it is possible to make your dreams happen, even if you are struggling, even if you don't have the best circumstances, you can still make it happen.
Is that part of what inspired you to also become a coach, so you could make that type of an impact as well, like maybe even more directly?
I think it definitely had a part of it. A big part of my coaching strategy is just helping my clients believe in themselves because it's incredible what you can accomplish when you believe in yourself. And actually, one of my favorite quotes, I have it written down, it's just in front of me, is the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving. So, a lot of the times, people come to me and they want something, but they don't believe that they're actually worthy of achieving that or receiving it. And a big part of my coaching is helping my clients discover that they are valuable, that they are worthy of receiving these things and they can accomplish them. We just have to take it one step at a time. And the other reason why I started to really find a passion in coaching is because I think just after my experiences and what I went through developing an eating disorder, and I truly don't want to put the blame on anybody there. But there were certain situations where I was affected and it did add to this growing issue. Part of the reason I wanted to become a coach was to help prevent that and to give my clients the experience that I wish I had.
I love that. And I think that's a consistent theme across how you show up. Like, you're showing up for your clients the way you wish you would have been shown up for. You're showing up online in a way that you wish that the younger version of yourself could have seen, as, there's a light there, and you can come out of it and you can still survive and you can get through those things. And you've shown yourself through that process too, like the acceptance, the validation, the support, the willingness to explore the deeper, darker things and come out of it, or process them. And so this is definitely a consistent theme for you, is like you're giving so passionately and you are doing what you said earlier, which is like recharging yourself and then providing that for other people, which is really beautiful. And I do just think it goes to show that anyone and everyone could be going through something or struggling with something. You may not know it. And even the people who you think have everything that they want in their life, or everything's perfect, they have something, there's probably some sort of darkness, whether they're experiencing it now or it's been in their life, and it's not like sunshine and rainbows just because you're on the biggest stage in the world, or you have this title, or you're running a successful business, or you're in this amazing relationship, whatever it might be. So I just love that you're able to represent that and really walk that talk.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that.
You're welcome. And actually, someone had, wanted me to ask you how it feels to have come this far in your passions, and what is it that you're now dreaming of doing or creating for your life and focusing on.
That is actually such a beautiful question. I have the biggest smile
Oh.
right now. I love that. Um, okay, so how does it feel to have come this far? I think, and this is something that my friends, they just give me hell for because they're like, Tessa, you've come so far, but you act like you haven't.
Mm.
And I think that's because, in a way, I almost have that scarcity mindset. Like, my mom and I grew up in a very sketch part of town, like we didn't go on family vacays. It was more so I was kind of like living in fight or flight a lot of the time. And I knew that I didn't want to live the rest of my life that way. So I kind of instilled this mindset of, okay, if anyone's going to make a change, like I got to do it. So I then just began this pursuit of just improving my life, accomplishing my goals. If I set a goal, I'll do everything I can to achieve it. And so far, every single thing that I've put my mind to, I have accomplished, like the pro card and starting a business and buying a home. And I have all of these things, but in a way, it's like I can't appreciate where I'm at because I'm always striving for more. And I'm like, it's never enough. Like, I never have that like internal satisfaction of like, Tessa, you've done a good job. And I was recently, I can't remember where I saw the quote, but it was just a quote saying like, you've done a really good job and I'm proud of you. And that like hit me, and it made me very emotional because it was like the words that I needed to hear because I hadn't been saying those things to myself. And I feel like it's really easy, especially with hustle culture and, social media. We're always comparing our highlight reels to everybody else's highlight reel. It can be easy to kind of get lost and forget what you have and forget how far you've come. And I think to me, deep down, like I finally feel like I'm at peace now, knowing that I have accomplished these things. And, I've made myself proud. I've made my dad proud. I've made my mom proud. It's a very peaceful feeling. It's not exciting. It's not noisy. It's content. It's peaceful. And I think that's how it feels. And it also gives me hope that, anything else I set my mind to, if I would like to change my life at any given moment, I could do that. And there's also that sense of freedom that comes with that. As for new things that I want to work towards, I think next year, I'm so excited for next year because I want to go to the Olympia. I want to win a pro show and I want to qualify for the Olympia. And I say that with confidence. I personally, I've never been the person to be like hashtag road to pro, like, saying it's going to happen before it actually happens. Like I like to work in silence and then, let success or let the outcome do the talking. But I can just feel something is going to be different about next year because I know my mindset is going to be so much more different. And I'm just excited to see what happens.
That was really beautiful, Tessa. Like, just outlining your process from being in fight or flight mode, growing up, and knowing you could be empowered to change your life, actually changing that and experiencing the peace and the freedom that came with it to now empower you to move forward and continue to chase those dreams. And even speaking back to your earlier point about being worthy of the things that you want, and now hearing you declare your goals for next year, it's a really beautiful, I think, summary or culmination of a lot of the words or beliefs or even affirmations that you have really attached to or live by.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And just honestly, I really do appreciate how open you've been, and I want to get your best advice for people. But before we get to that, is there anything I didn't ask you about that you wish I would have?
That's a very good question. I honestly feel like we talked about so much, and I feel like in many of my answers, I kind of like went from A to B all the way to like Z, like change the topic. I feel like we covered so much.
We truly did. Honestly, it was really cool because I was prepping this episode earlier and I was like thinking we'll have a lot to talk about. But then when we started talking, it just flowed so much. I was like, wow, check, check, check. Wow, this is a new topic. Oh, that's interesting. So I just love how present I could tell you were very present in this conversation. And it's something I very much value and appreciate, and I'm sure the listeners will too. But I like to end the episodes by getting your best advice. So can you share your best advice for someone who's never competed before but is thinking about it, and then your best advice for someone on their road to pro?
Absolutely. So, my best advice for somebody who wants to compete and they're thinking about it would be really assess your situation. If you're currently, struggling with issues with food or you have an eating disorder, like that's definitely a point of concern that you would want to communicate with your coach. The second thing would be to find a good coach and really make sure you have a good conversation with them. If they are just wanting to take your money and give you a diet plan and put you on a bunch of, supplements and whatnot, that's a huge red flag. And I see that happening a lot with competitors, especially when they're new to the industry, they've never done a show before. There's some really sketchy diets out there. There's a lot of that can result in a lot of health implications. So I would say finding a good coach who can really lead you forward with your best interest in mind, especially your health. I would say that's very, very important because at the end of the day, I think every single competitor knows, like to some degree, what we do is not necessarily good for us. It's not good for our bodies. So as long as we can do that in the healthiest way possible, I think that is probably the most important thing. Like I know when I was reaching out to my new coach, Braden Miller, we got on a phone call. I think the phone call was 4 hours, like four
Wow.
hours long of us talking and me asking questions, him asking me questions. Like I was 110% sure when I hired Braden to prep me for my pro debut. Like there was not a doubt in my mind. And he absolutely delivered. And he cares so much about health. Like he cares about me as a human being. And I think that's another thing. If you're wanting to compete for the very first time, find find a coach who cares about you as an individual rather than just getting you to the stage.
Couldn't agree more. And what
Yeah.
about those on their road to pro?
I would say those on the road to pro is you just really truly have to believe in yourself. I think when I was gunning for my pro card, I did 6 shows back to back. I just missed the mark on like 5 of them. I think the one right before I had my worst placing, I think I placed sixth in the Olympia Amateur. And a placing like that can easily get somebody discouraged and have someone be like, well, I'm going to throw in the towel because, I didn't win. So there's no point in trying again. But I think you just really have to believe in yourself because even though I placed sixth and fifth and, didn't win for 5 times in a row, there wasn't 1 second where I did not believe in myself. I believed in myself like through and through. Like there was nothing that could change that, and I still do. I still have so much belief in myself. Like that's the one thing that I've always had, even though sometimes my mind can be my own worst enemy. I never stop believing in myself. And if you are a competitor and you're gunning for your pro card, obviously like know when to take 2 steps back to take care of yourself if you need to, but never stop believing in yourself. I think that is the most important thing because after placing sixth in the Olympia Amateur, I went on to do one more show. I was actually very close to ending my prep because I was exhausted. I did 6 shows back to back it within like 3 months. Like I was tired and I was going to throw in the towel. but something just was like, no, just keep going, just one more. And then at that next show, that's when I turned pro. And yes, I did have my coach pushing me. I had a lot of people telling, like, encouraging me to keep going. But I think, if I didn't believe in myself, if I didn't think that I could do it, I probably would have given up. But I'm very happy that I believe in myself and I kept going because I made that happen.
That's so awesome. I love that advice, and I love how you kept going and you were mindful of like that energy as well that was encouraging you to keep going forward for your dreams. And everything that you've shared today has been very impactful. And again, I do appreciate your time, and I want people to be able to continue to follow this journey of yours and even maybe work with you or connect with you. So can you let everybody know how they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am mostly on Instagram. My Instagram is just my name, Tessa Baresssi. And I'm also on YouTube. I make like a sporadic appearance, maybe every 5 months on YouTube. But I am there too. And I did document a little bit of my prep earlier this year. I occasionally post on TikTok, but let's be real, I post nothing fitness related on TikTok. It's basically just me and my personality. For coaching, I have my own coaching Instagram. It's Rzlnt Fitness. So that's spelt with a Z, RZLNT Fitness. People are always like, what is that? What does that mean? What? It's resilient. And they're like, oh.
Really? That seems so obvious to me. So I think it's great.
I've had so many people be like, what is this jumble of letters? I'm like, excuse me.
No, yeah,
That's
no.
my business.
That's my business, everybody. Thank you. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes page, of course. So everybody listening, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you are listening right away, it's at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section. It's alphabetized. You'll find Tessa's episode there. Not only will you see all those links just mentioned, but you're also going to see a full summary of the episode, a bulleted list of the topics we discussed, as well as timestamps, so you can go back and find various parts, as well as share this with your friends or teammates and let them know that they got to listen to these parts of the episode, or of course the whole thing, which always goes a long way when you guys tag us. Let us know what you think about the episode, share your main takeaways or what stood out to you. It does mean a lot. So appreciate you all tuning in. And Tessa, thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Celeste. It was honestly an honor to come on today. And I'm so, so grateful that you had me on your show.
Oh, you're so welcome. It was my pleasure too. And definitely stay on the line with me. I'm going to wrap this episode up and then we will chat for a second.
Have a little girls chit chat after.
Little chit chat. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.